inviting me today to speak. I think I'm going to focus my comments on the obesity epidemic, and I'm going to start out actually examining whether there actually is an obesity epidemic. I think it's a worthwhile question to examine, especially when the government sees fit to spend our tax dollars solving the problem. And then I'll sort of go through a couple of the methods that they use to solve the problem, and finally talk obviously about new media's impact in this area. So is there an epidemic of obesity? I don't think anyone wants to stand up and publicly say no, we all look great. I think Americans, obviously could stand to lose a few pounds, and certainly when you look at the data, there's no doubt that there has been a spike in obesity rates in this country. We saw it mainly in the 80s, and it continued in the 90s. But for the past decade, and you don't hear this a lot in the media, obesity rates have been leveling off, particularly among children and women. And the latest data actually says that among childhood obesity, it's actually declining. The most exciting news is that it's declining among the demographic most at risk, and that is children who live under the poverty line, minority children, children of single mothers. This is really good news. Unfortunately, it's not news you'll hear much. You still hear government regulators and government officials saying it's still an epidemic, we're all going to die. Michelle mentioned the costs associated, which is often the argument used of why we have to tackle and solve the obesity crisis, because healthcare costs will go through the roof. So the good news is these things are declining. And again, why you won't hear that from the media is at the Independent Women's Forum, we've just launched this new project called The Culture of Alarmism, where we examine this cycle. And basically it works where an interest group or sort of an activist organization will release a study with terrifying information in it, like your children are poisoned by their canned food, or this product is dangerous. These studies are often produced by these organizations that they don't meet the basic level of scientific standards, but they are terrifying and they look very official. The media often runs with these stories, and you'll see headlines splashed with terrifying comments about how, again, canned food will kill your children, their baby bottles will kill them. That results in an outraged public, and many of these stories are geared towards women, and particularly mothers. And so you suddenly have an outraged public demanding action. Well, that action usually comes in the form of a politician running in with a great new idea to regulate a product or to tax or ban the product. So that is really the dangerous cycle, because when you have public demanding the government come in, then the public's going to acquiesce to more government regulations through taxes and bans and these different types of efforts to limit consumer access to these products. So some of the ways in which the government is limiting or trying to tackle this problem are food taxes, and soda taxes is really the one that we see in the media most often. Michelle mentioned Mayor Bloomberg, his was actually a ban, to ban certain drinks above a certain size, but we've actually seen taxes, and that soda taxes are, several states have soda taxes. California, actually 2 states in California this past November just tried to pass ballot initiatives to institute a soda tax in their cities. That failed. But it's really popular now, and part of the reason it's popular is because many American cities are going bankrupt, particularly in California. So if a politician can say, we really need to tackle this obesity problem, it's for the children, right? It's to make people more healthy, and they'll say, we're going to do a 1 cent per soda tax. I mean, do you even pick up pennies on the ground anymore? I don't know why people think that a 1 cent, why that even seems like a good idea to people, but they put these efforts, and sometimes they do pass these soda taxes, and they're really revenue raisers. They're really creative ways to get more revenue so that they continue, so they don't have to cut programs or control their spending. So unfortunately, these things do often pass, because when you're trying to do it to reduce obesity, it seems like a worthwhile cause. We all know this is folly, as I said, who picks up a penny on the ground. Also, you know, when you target one particular item, for instance, soda, you seem to be forgetting that someone can eat a pizza alongside that soda. So, I mean, from a common sense perspective, it doesn't work. But there are studies. There are also data out there that shows that these taxes don't work at all. And what's most galling is that you actually have to tax sodas. For instance, to sway behavior, you have to tax. You have to put a tax of like $1 per soda, which no one is going to propose that. That would obviously fail. That would never pass. So the actual taxes that would work to sway people's behavior are never being proposed. As far as bans, Michelle talked a little bit about Mayor Bloomberg's ban. The one thing that's really frustrating about the ban is that it's another case of the government picking winners and losers. The ban is really complicated. It only applies to certain businesses. So it's okay in grocery stores and convenience stores, but it's not okay in things like street carts, delis, fast food restaurants. So the Big Gulp lives on in New York City. It has not been banned. You can still get it. The other thing is it chooses certain drinks. So a soda is banned and other sugary drinks are banned. But coffee drinks, if it has milk in it. Now, I mean, if you've ever seen some of those coffee confections coming out of Starbucks, you know, those have a lot more calories. Sometimes, I mean, they get up to 1,000 calories, whereas, you know, a 20-ounce thing of soda is far less. Plus it has fat in it. But again, I mean, it's just the absurdity of these bans. I think when we talk about these bans and soda taxes too, it's important to look at the data of the habits of Americans. Now, soda consumption's down. It's down 12% over the past decade. And what's skyrocketing is water. Water sales are through the roof. So we can try to tackle, I mean, politicians love, you know, it's kind of funny watching them run around saying, you know, for instance, with childhood obesity, it's toys and Happy Meals. No, it's unhealthy school lunches. No, it's soda. No, it's video games. They're always trying to identify that one thing, but I think anybody who looks at these issues knows obesity, childhood obesity, these are very complicated issues. Unfortunately, it doesn't really stop the politicians from producing or proposing these taxes. The last one are regulations, and these are designed to limit your access to these items. So the FDA has announced it's probably going to start regulating salt and sugar and packaged food. Also, they're going to start looking at food marketing, that's advertising to children. They did that last year, and it sort of went by the wayside, but they're probably going to be doing that again this year. As far as new media is concerned, it's proven to be a real inconvenience to the nannies, to government regulators. New media doesn't sort of fit into that cycle I talked about, where you have a study that comes out and then the news picks up on it. People are terrified, government regulation. They sort of don't fit into that, and that drives the regulators crazy. It's actually a lot of the bloggers who look at these studies and determine that, you know, they're completely factually inaccurate, and they actually shed light on how this sort of system works. Two examples, I think, that are really important. You know, new media is providing, as far as health, sort of the health of people and the choices that they make and the diets that they're on. New media has proven to be really useful for people trying to lose weight. I mean, you have a lot of bloggers out there who are on these different, you know, gluten-free, paleo, whatever. There's apps out there. People are really able to, by themselves, choose their own resources, whether it's going to a certain site of someone writing their own information. And again, that's been really useful. But we've seen government regulators even try to shut those folks down. There was the case in North Carolina of, his name is Steve Cooksey, and he was a blogger. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this because IJ took this case on. He's a blogger. He just had his personal experience. He's a diabetic. He went on the paleo diet. He had some great advice. He blogged on it, and he also offered advice to people through the phone. State officials told him what he was doing was illegal, that he had to have a license. They actually sent him his blogs with that they had made edits to it with a red pen, telling him. So that was one example of where the government is actually trying to stop these people who are providing information or working within the market, trying to provide information with their own resources, and the government's trying to shut them down. One other great example is Sarah Burrows. She's a freelance writer in North Carolina. Again, North Carolina seems like an awful state, but she's also a writer, a freelance writer, and she broke the story. I'm sure a lot of you remember the story about the sweet little 4-year-old who had her lunch taken away